Okay, it's like the third or fourth time I started a video with the old CB1 in the shot, and then not worked on the CB1. And that was almost true again today. There was a 2 bikes cleaning out the garage moving sale, 2 bikes for 30 bucks yesterday, and I didn't hop right on it, put it off for a few hours, and it was gone. So I missed it. So I could be tearing down those 2 bikes today, but I'm not. Instead, I'm going to finish the CB1. Because why not? I really need to finish it. I really want to get it for sale. I really want to get it out of the way. I really want to finish the Nothing Special Schwinn, start riding it around. But so for today, we are going to do this CB1. And it is a brake cable and housing install and setup. And the first thing I'm going to start with is these pads. We put brand new pads on the last video, which was, yes, like 6 months ago. Really go dig for it. But the first thing to do with brand new pads is sand the glazing or the gloss off. That stuff doesn't stop well, it squeaks. So we'll sand it till they're nice and matte, no longer shiny. We clean this whole bike. We might clean the rims just to be safe, but honestly, a dirty rim is less likely to squeal than like a cleaned rim that's covered in soap residue or rubbing alcohol. So if a wheel's real dirty or greasy, like a lot of truing and spilled oil over the nipples, I'll clean it. I'll definitely clean dirty rims with simple grain degreaser. Sometimes I'll clean them with rubbing alcohol. And if they squeal, then I will sand them. The same way I sand brake pads. I'll take some 80 grit and sand the whole brake surface and spin the wheel around while sanding. And do that about 3 times as much as you think you need. That and sanding the pads will usually stop it. Not drying them off after you do sanding. That little sanding dust really quiets them down. It still doesn't stop. We're starting with sanding. So here is a little bit of leftover 60 grit. I love 60, I use it. Well, I really love 80, I use it for everything, but whatever. Whatever forever. I'm just gonna, oh boy. I kind of knew the seat post was loose, and I was kind of just rolling with it, but boy, that just slid like 5 inches. Let's not drop the bikes out of the stand. Tighten this dude up a little. Okay, back to sanding. Sometimes I fold the sandpaper over on itself, give it a little texture to hold. You can fold it over a little block of wood or anything that's kind of flat and easy to hold. And really, it just takes, 10-12 seconds. The other one's always a pain in the ass at a bike stand. So here you can see this pad. It's just a little dusty, but it's real glossy. We're just gonna scuff until it's not shiny anymore. Pretty much all the gloss is gone. There's like a little tiny line down the middle, but it'll be all right. Come over to the other side, which you cannot see, but same thing. I've had this little bag of goodies stashed for months. I remember what's in it. All right, generic, cheap, but brand new, kind of nice looking, a little modern for my taste saddle, but I'm sure it was free to me, or I got the bins, or swap meet, or free box or something. I do have a vintage red charge saddle that I think would look awesome on this bike, but I don't want to get rid of it. It looks good, like a turbo. I think it might be comfortable. I might like it. So we'll definitely do this guy, most likely, probably. We've also got a brand new seat post I bought for it, which is 26.4. I cleaned this out. I'm really kind of convinced myself it's 26.4, but it's not. It's 26.2, but it's just loosey-goosey. So we won't use this. There's $18 I wasted. But I did find this 26, also 26.4 vintagey post I thought would look better anyways. But I think this is a 26.2 cheapy vintagey post. It's really the right thing. These originally came with a chrome steel post. I almost got one to make it more matchy and correct, but I hate clamps. I like the integrated posts. So probably neither of these will go on. We do have some brake cable and housing left over from the kit we used for the derailleurs. So that's great. We do have the original Shimano cable hangers. But, you know, it's a rusty bolt, and I can replace that bolt, but that nut, but the bolt's rusty. I'll look and see if I have anything better. But also, these guys I'm in love with. So these are the little Tektro straddle cables. These are great for vintage bikes. You can get them in silver. They're really actually hard to find in silver now. But you can get them in silver, you can get them in black. They come with a new straddle. And the nice thing about these is that the spring tension's mangled on your bikes. You know, a lot of bikes have holes in the candy post, so you can move the spring to different holes to get different tension. Some bikes don't have that. But if it's just minorly mangled and that move is too much, this is really nice, so you can just pull it slightly off center to recenter your candies. And then it's got little set screws, so you can tighten it down, so you can get your candies and your brakes all nice and centered with this guy. It's a real problem solver, and I love these on vintage brakes, especially if you're doing like Neo-E Retro-E builds. So I got a couple of these. They're way too much money, but I'll probably use them. I got the weird little vintagey rear cable stop, a little top hat. I'll probably use this if I was still at the shop and I had my whole collection of things. I would probably use a different one. Maybe even the Surly one, which is a nice stainless guy with the barrel adjuster. There's not enough room in this one for the Surly one. We'll probably have to use this dude. It'll probably be fine, but no barrel adjuster. But the brake levers themselves have these weird, cool barrel adjusters that we will use. And sort of fit in and lock into place. This little sort of hex head that fits into the body, and then this whole thing twists, and that's the spring. And a few ferrules, and a few little clear donut-y slap dudes. Stuff that came with the kit. I have a lot more stuff now, so we'll see what we use. I thought I had pedals in there, but I don't. I must have taken them off for something else. We got to find some pedals too. Well, I do have one more set of these cheap black Welgo BMXy pedals, which would be totally good on this. But I also have a barely used set of these white Alienation BMXy pedals. This bike does have white logos. And I'm doing all white housing. If I was doing a white saddle and grips, that'd be really tight. I think I'm going to use them anyways because they were basically free to me. They came on a different bike I bought for the wheels and tires. And the white will go with the white, and it'll be kind of fun. It might be a little bit much, but we can always change them out later. Who cares? They're used. Sometimes I'm hesitant to open new things. I'm not sure I'm going to like them. I'm just going to work and I'll really sit on it. But since they're used and they'll come right off again, it does not matter. Grease on those threads. Boom! Alright, the next real step is going to be to set these brake pads up. So these pads have both an external nut, so you could use like a three-way, but I think the internal is also an Allen. Not that one. The big one? The big one! So what I want to do is make sure that the top is the top and the bottom is the bottom, which on some cheapy pads there's no difference. Some nice pads there's a difference. Really look and see which side looks like the top and the bottom. This hardware has a bunch of washers and concaves, so the whole thing can move. So you really adjust toe in and angle. So we're just going to get it up there. We're going to look from the top. Try to get these pads as flat to the rim as possible. And about as high as the rim as possible. Cantilever brakes, they swing in and down. So as they're swinging in, they swing down. So where calipers are the opposite. They swing in, they swing up. So the cantilever, you want the pad as high as possible. The cantilever, you want as low as possible. Without it doing anything weird like hanging over the rim, getting into where your tire is, hanging under the rim. There's a lot to take into account for pads. Here's an old man mechanic trick. Just take a drop of oil while your pads are a little bit loose and drop it on that concave or ball bearing hardware. Just the tiniest little bit. This way, while you're trying to rotate and adjust your pads, they're going to move instead of bind, and burr and give you a hard time. Just a little bit of oil. Just the tiniest bit, not enough that's ever going to leak down, get all over your brake pad, or cause any real problems. Make sure you don't get it on your fingers. Make sure you don't touch the pads. Now, people like to tell you that you need to, of course I got it all over. If it gets on the braking surface, you're going to know it. It's going to squeal and squeal and squeal, and you have to clean the whole rim and clean everything, so be careful. People like to tell you need to get them towed in. That's kind of true-ish some of the time. I like to get them pretty flat to start. Sometimes I'll tow them in a little bit, and then really we'll test ride the bike and mess with them. Sometimes if they're flat and they squeal a little bit, towing them will make it worse. So you got to come back and make them flat again, tow them out a little bit, do slightly up, slightly down. Sometimes a squealing brake pad, all I have to do is loosen it and retighten it, and I'll let it just move and wiggle just enough the squeal go away. They have to be just right, and sometimes the slightest little changes will get rid of a squeal. People think you need to make major changes. These candies are really adjustable hardware, and a lot of old style brakes with no adjustable hardware, you can just bend the whole brake. I have just set a matchbook or a beer can lid under the pad and held it to the rim and tightened it, and that sort of forces it into toe in. A lot of like the cool stop brakes, they come with a little extra heel on one side of the pad. That's to go to the back to sort of force the front to be towed in. I tightened this down, and the whole pad moved a little bit, so I just move the whole pad again until it's pretty dang even, real high on this rim, several millimeters on the bottom of the rim for it to wear and move down. You can always adjust them as they wear. Moved again. Alright, we're going to try that and do the same on the other side, then we'll do the fronts. Just grabbing them, holding them in. Sometimes you can set the cable housing up and you can just pull the brake lever to hold them in. Sometimes. Is the wheel in tight? Yeah. Just check to see if the wheel is in tight, because if you have things in loose or crooked or whatever, it'll often mess you up. Alright, so got the pad up pretty dang high. Holding it with my thumb because it's just trying to twist down when I turn the wrench. I'm trying to get the hardware to seat up, not the whole pad and everything to move. It's a good start. Same thing on this side. Pads are pretty symmetrical, it's not really top or bottom. Flipping it up against the rim, you can see it's hitting really low, almost falling off. Grabbing it with this guy, we're going to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Up, we're going to wiggle left and right for toe in, toe out. Try and get it to hit pretty flat. Use my thumb to push it down a little bit. It's hitting pretty flat, but maybe the pad's not perfectly flat to the rim. There's a little gap at the top. That's okay, it'll wear in, we'll probably readjust it, it'll probably squeal. And tighten it, you can see the whole pad moves. Push down on that side of my thumb. Hold it down with my thumb so we can try and just get these hardwares to cinch up. Oh, this hardware's terrible, it's all huge and weird. And hitting at a terrible angle. Really has a ton of cinching to do, which is probably marring and deforming. Try and move with my thumb again. If it's too much of an angle, it won't move with your thumb. You can stick a giant adjustable wrench on it. You can see this front corner is up over the rim, the back's hanging down millimeters and millimeters. So adjustable wrench, and adjust it to about this pad size. We're just gonna tweak it down. But I still don't like the way it's hitting. And there's no problem doing something several times to figure out how to do it the right way and how you like it. Why, hardware? Why are you so janktastic? Part of me does want to switch to just modern pads with ball bearing hardware because they work so good. Holding my thumb, twisting, make sure it's tight. And we'll probably adjust it later. So we're just getting it real close for now. Both pads real close, we can set everything else up and then make it easier to do the adjusting later. Alright, we got the housing. So we really want side cutters for this. Cable cutters really work better for cutting cable. The side cutters really work better for cutting the housing. Got the barrel adjuster, make sure they move freely. Turning it most of the way in, but leaving a little bit just in case we get the brakes too tight. Right rear, setting this in. Just roughing the size and shape up. Guess we'll come on the inside of the shift cables because they really stick out in the way. I'm just sort of holding it up. I want to make sure it's not hitting the shift cables or rubbing. I want to make sure we can turn the wheel all the way without it popping out, getting real tight, getting all mangled. I'm going to say I'm going to cut it a little bit longer even. I want this little stretch of housing coming right out of the barrel adjuster and right into the frame and any stops. I want it to be kind of straight for a few inches coming out. Just normally at rest. I don't want immediate kinks anywhere because that's where it kinks. That's where the cable starts kinking. That's where you get all the friction and all the problems later on. So I am pretty happy with this. It's about as short as I'm comfortable making it. Could definitely make it a little bit longer, but everyone makes their stuff way too short and causes all of their own problems. I'm going to use the side cutters. I'm going to try and hopefully wiggle in between these coils for a cut. We're hoping that it cut pretty clean. That's a little messy. They always are. This is the factory cut. It's really clean. I'm going to do the other side as well. Hopefully not cut this piece. I'm just using it to measure. And we do have the cable stop in the stem. If I was a good person, I'd add one to the headset. So you can adjust the stem. The stem's all the way up. People like their stuff all the way up. It's probably fine. Real tight coming out of this housing. So make it a little bit longer, even though that's big and goofy and everyone wants to make it like here, so it's just all tight angles and friction. Front cable stop. Sure, I have a nice one. Here we are. Can always change it. So this is kind of straightish without being comically long. It's kind of comically long. I'm going to cut this chunk out of the new piece, not the old piece that is cut down to size. I do that all the time. And you wreck that piece and have a bunch left over. All right. It's a little sharp burr in there. I'd love to be able to cut it. It is being a total brat, as they almost always are. Woohoo! This side's good, but it's not flat. So this side has an angle like this, and we really want it to be totally flat and not have any burrs. The best way of doing that is a little bench grinder and going If I don't have one, I don't have room for one, I'm not going to get one. I'm going to use a crappy old hand file. It takes 20 or 30 seconds. It's not the end of the world. Files only cut going one direction. So don't just rub back and forth. Go one direction, or if you do, see I'm just pushing and then coming back up and pushing and coming back up and pushing and coming back up. If you go the other direction, all you're doing is knocking the sharp edge off the file and making it dull and not work. Got my little Sharpie pokey tool. These are like $5 for a whole kit with a bunch of angles at a lot of hardware stores. Or you can take an old dead spoke, sharpen it down on the grinder. This housing has internal lining, so there's an extra plastic lubed liner on the inside, so I'm just making sure that's opened up and clear. Just making sure the cable is going to run through that little internal liner instead of next to it, or not be able to get through it, or be all annoying. I got some little ferrules, and we have to check to see if the ferrule will fit. Some old stuff ferrules fit, some old stuff ferrules don't fit. And this old stuff ferrules fit. Now that's the first part of the housing, but this is a split, and there's another piece of housing back here. So we'll have to do that too. That goes to this little weird guy, which we have to get in here without the seat post falling. Something I probably should have thought of earlier. It was never too late, but I'm going to clean all this old dirt and grease off because it's unsightly and gross, and the bike doesn't look all new and overhauled with a bunch of old dirty grease and junk on it. So, you know, take care of your stuff. Just gently resting the bike up on top of the stand. So you can get in here. I really think this is on backwards anyways. I think these quick releases actually go to the drive side on most old bikes. So easier to adjust while you're riding or while you're about to ride. So I'm going to go ahead and flip her around where we're at it. Hang this cute little hanger. I think this is how most guys do it with it out on the drive side. You can read it this way so you know it's upside down the other way. Make sure this still moves nice and free. If the seat binder is pinching and grabbing this little hanger, you're in trouble. It means it's tightening on the hanger and not tightening on the seat post, and the seat post is always going to move and slide. So if this doesn't move freely, you need to file this guy some, or file in between the actual frame on the actual seat binder ears to make a little bit more room, or find a narrower one, but you have to do something. That's a real problem I see on a lot of bikes. Beautiful, now we can cut this last little bit. That's going to go from this little top hat stop and come up and go into this seat lug. This one's a little tricky because it's got to be pretty tight, but not so tight it's rubbing. See, it's got a real tight, bad angle going right into this little housing, this little cable stop, and that's a bummer. There's nothing you can do because this is just a bad, tight design. God, it's almost less bad coming under it. Almost. It is less bad coming under it. Should we go that way? No one does it. Everyone goes over. I'm just going to go over, and if it really sucks, maybe I'll change it. Just got this guy measured up. See if the ferrule fits in that top hat, and it does. If it fits, we use them. If it doesn't, well, we just don't worry about it. Got real loose. And these braze-ons are probably made for some oversized stuff. And I used to save oversized ferrules or use the Wheels Manufacturing machined aluminum ones, which I really loved. You could stuff those in there. But I don't have any, so this will have to do. There's this empty piece of housing. What we'll probably end up doing is using the little donuts. Little donuts. On a vintagey bike, you would have a whole solid little tube. Save this weird old one off an old mountain bike. Definitely trim it down and use it, and that'd be kind of more fun. It's gray, which is weird. Modern ones are like a translucent with a little bit of grease in them, so they look almost green. Might have some somewhere. I'm going to use this, it's fun. So this is a vintage piece from the 90s, and it's a little too long. And the ends are a little gross anyway, so I'm just going to trim it. Trim it down. Probably drop a little lube in it. Just a couple of drops, make the housing go nice and smooth and slide around smooth. And I just sort of jammed it in the braze-on so it doesn't fall on the ground. The kit comes with a long cable and a short cable. Short's the front. We're doing the rear first, I guess, so let's use this long one. So it's double-sided, so we're using the mountain barrel style. So I have to cut off the little road side. I don't think this cable and housing has splits. So we're going to fish it all the way through old school style, and then we'll clip it into the bottom. Pop out the other side, and it knocked the little ferrule off, so sliding that back on. Fish in this new lubed tube. Pushing this through the braze-on. Fish, fish, fish. Of course. What a brat. You can see this is doing everything but... Ow! Fucking pumps! All pump manufacturers should be sued for making this two-leg style where the pumps constantly fall down in your way, on your stuff, on your feet. I hate it so much. It's got a round base, or 4 legs, or something. So evil. Fish it through there, it's popping out the other end. Gently fish it through here. Fish it through the top hat. Now this has a slit. Okay, finally, it's through everything. Now we should be able to just pull it tight without it being a total brat. All right. I'm going to hold the cable back and squeeze the lever. I'm looking for is friction. See if it feels real grindy and terrible. See if it's catching on some end somewhere. Something's too tight, it's too much of a kink, especially here. It's a lot nicer if I aim down. If I aim at the brake, it's a little bit frictiony, but it's not that bad. I think it'll be totally fine. Now the real question, do I want to spend some time digging around for some nice old guys, or switch right to these $14 cable hangers that we may or may not even need? But I know these will solve all of my problems if I use them. Screw it. I've always had problems with old Shimano brakes. Even though these ones are almost brand new, this bike has like no miles. I bet they're fine. What I'm going to decide to try first is the old Shimano ones have these really rusty bolts. They're cool bolts, but they're old and rusty. Found some nice clean generic ones, but instead of using the whole thing, I'm just going to go ahead and use just the pinch bolts and the nuts out of them on the Shimano ones. Have it be a little more pro. Give it a try anyways. They seem to fit fine. I think they'll tighten down and everything will be totally cool. Theory. And a little bend on the end of this cable so I can fish it through and I'm not get stuck inside the straddle. I want to pop through, pop out. There we go. And we want it, you basically want the straddle to make a perfect L, or be basically as low as you can get it to the tire. I'm going to set it up high enough to where you can still get a fender in there and your bracket and all that, and things aren't going to hit and interfere. But we're not using the straddles out of this kit, so now I got to go find some straddles. Now for straddles, you have to be careful. Try and find these old style straddles, with a little extra hand pull so you can get them on and off the bike. This is from Pork Chop BMX. I buy a lot of stuff from him on eBay because it's like $14 for a 5-pack. A lot of other guys have the same picture and say $14 and send you one cable. So really make sure you're getting the whole pack, not just a single cable. So this is a whole brand new Diacomp kit. Very excited, very thick, very nice, very braided. Not knowing this stuff is a drag because you'll have to go order on eBay and take a week, then you'll get, 10 more minutes in the project where you order something else. So it's nice to learn all this stuff and have it ahead of time and have it sitting around for when you need it. I always get the longest ones, you can always cut them down, but you can't make the short ones longer. Straddle action! Okay, so one end of the brakes has like a brake cable style end for the straddle, the other side's got a pinch bolt. We gotta get them in here, we gotta get this all pinched together, figure out about where we want it, and pinch this pinch bolt down. I think I'm gonna use this tool I never use! This is a old brake tool for grabbing some brake pad arms and pinching your stuff all together. And it may, I think it's for old road brakes and it's not into this. Everything about this is for road bikes only, that's a shame. I'm gonna try, when you don't have the right tools, just keep trying stuff until something kind of acts like the right tool. Like an old toe strap. Woohoo! So I've wrapped the toe strap completely around the brakes. Strap them down so they're pretty close to tight on the wheel, which will give us a good starting point. Okay. Cable is seated in this brake, in this center guy, in this brake. We want to pull it up enough for enough clearance. So basically get all the way up till it's in line with the bridge. So there's plenty of room for fender and hardware and brackets and whatnot. And hope that makes basically a perfect L. It vaguely looks like it might be. Snugging it up, but I'm not going hammer mechanic. That last Schwinn I pulled apart was hammer mechanic. Everything's on so tight it's about to strip or break. I've definitely stripped things, I've definitely broken things. These little pinch bolts are not high quality steel. They will absolutely strip and break. So snugging it till it's getting a little scary, but not too scary. Then we will pull this cable all the way down. Sometimes these little ferrules like to pop up on the outside of these brazons. So I want to make sure everything's in and seated the way it's supposed to be. Everything's Everything's cool, everything's seated, everything's nice. Pull it by hand, it's okay, it's got a little slack and kind of comes down a millimeter or 3 because you need that room for pulling the brakes. It's another thing about cannies no one really knows. People try and get them as tight as possible, and all you're actually doing is getting rid of your mechanical advantage. Your advantage doesn't start right here, it starts halfway through that pole. So you want them to be a little loose and sloppy, just a little, and your brakes will actually work better. The spongier and weirder they feel, the better they're going to work. And no one likes that, because I think spongy brakes means bad or loose or sloppy or problems. But often it's correct on old bikes. I'm holding this back bolt with the hole in it to make sure it doesn't turn and twist your cable as it enters into the little hanger. I've done that before, and that's causes all sorts of problems. It makes your brakes all spongy and not better, just spongy and bad, because it has to straighten out before it can actually start tightening. Getting this kind of tight, but I don't want to get too tight and mangle it and start breaking stuff, but we don't want to. It's a hard angles and a small tool, so you're not really getting a ton of leverage on it. Oh, look at that. We're squeezing that lever. We get about half the travel. So that's about right where we want it. We still have the whole barrel adjuster to mess with. And the pads don't look totally even. That could be this cable. They look pretty close to even. I'm glad I went this way instead of right to the $14 modern Tector things, which are both out of place and expensive. These old brakes don't have any sort of tension adjustment in them, but it's close enough. Fight, 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 fight. Get over everything. Stay in place. Work great. Okay, so you can see here, I just use a tow strap around the whole brake arm, pads, tire to get these in pretty close to the rim. Do the same thing here. We're going to run the cable through, down, and we're going to put the hanger up just about high enough to leave all this clearance here for a fender or brackets or racks or whatever, and just get it about here. So I got this old rusty Shimano one. Shimano one is free and clear. I did have a very nice set of these Shimano ones with a very nice set of Dior brakes. And I chose not to just steal them and to do this route instead. Cutting off the road head. The fishy thing. There we go. Holding everything with my hand so I can fish. Gotta figure out a better way of doing that. So knock the ferrule out, putting the ferrule back in, coming down, pulling it through, fish, find that hole. There we go. Oh, almost. There we go. Pulling it up to here, setting it in on the back side, making sure everything's seated. Coming right down the center. This has a hole in the bolt. Hole in the bolt. Bending it. Fishing it through that hole in the bolt. Turning it, trying to get it to slide out of this thing. Don't be trapped. The bend is much too high. There we go. Slides right out, put it right on the middle. Middle, give it a little tension. And I'm gonna hang it right about there. We want about as low as possible without being in the way. Is usually the best bet. Usually. Carefully holding the back so you can see the cable goes straight in, up and down through this. If it gets twisted and sideways, it'll always be a problem. Make your brakes soggy and mushy and terrible. Pretty tight, not so tight I'm afraid I'm about to break something. The new Straddle, and this just locks in on this side and comes through the pinch bolt on this side. And I'm gonna put it through this first. Yes, this is open, you can fish it through later, but it's always just way harder than it should be. There we go. Set, set, set. Tighten this little pinch bolt. Tight till it's kind of scary, but not too tight. I'm gonna bring this guy out the side, and we'll test it. Get rid of that. We have about half of the lever travel, so that's a pretty good start. Looks like it's hitting pretty even. Maybe 4 millimeters on this side, maybe 3 on this side. Sometimes you can wiggle it, adjust it, put a little English on it. Now this side's got way too much. Now we're back. All right. So yeah, these nice little brakes weren't worn out, so didn't really have to mess with their stuff. And in theory, yeah, you want a perfect triangle from this pinch bolt to this head to here. Should make a perfect triangle. That's how you get the most leverage. That's how you set up cannies. Everybody says cannies are terrible because I always set the straddle up like 12 inches and just do, have this thing's way up here and just do all sorts of horrible stuff, pads at a bad angle or wrong spacers. Usually just set them up all wrong and they say cannies suck. Cannies don't suck, this is great. We will still have to put the cable tips on and we'll test ride it and wiggle the pads and maybe make some adjustments, but right now it's about 99.9% correct. I like to push this dude down, just kind of get it out of the way. Give ourselves, a couple inches so we can yank on it if we need to. Same with this guy, just a couple inches. Woohoo! Cable tips. Guys, they'll tell you to do a million other things. Usually it's using the side cutters to put little lines. You always hack through or you don't get them on tight enough, they slide off, cable frays. I load them into some channel locks, man. Loaded on one real tight squeeze. And it still looks kind of pinchy, you can still see some little lines, but they don't pull off this way. Almost ever. This is the not pro way, that's actually the proest way. I do it every time now. Probably for the last 10 years like this, because everything else sucks and it's dumb. It's all ego and not what actually functions. Okay. The straddle cable is still old school, and it's very thick. I gotta wind this on to get it all the way on without fraying. Ah, real tight squeeze, both hands. Beautiful. Do the same on the rear. Now if I sell my shop, I'd actually buy 2 different sizes of these cable tips. A skinnier one for derailleurs and a slightly thicker one for brakes. But I don't have them, and the thicker ones work fine for everything if you just are careful. And that is almost everything. I'm going to pop the saddle on. I'm going to put some new grips on, even though those ones are kind of fine. They're Avner, these are probably from the 90s. God, maybe I will leave them on. They're original and they're fine. Oh, ugly saddle, whatever. Can't win them all. This old ugly seat post I took and just took some Scotch-Brite and just rubbed it down, twisting it in my hand to give it a nice even finish, make it from old and rusty and scratchy to looking, pretty even and modern and good. It's an old mechanic trick, guys. That's old oxidized and slightly scuffed up stems all the time. Just make them, they don't look right, they look even and nice and don't look weird. Alright. I still have to cable tip the shifters. See if stuff still works. Why aren't you working, bud? Other double check's going to be making sure the wheel's on tight. Quite probably dusting this bike off. It is so dusty from sitting here for months and months and months not being touched. But it'll probably get dusty sitting in my friend's basement for months and months and months not getting sold. Come on, Portland, buy some bikes, man. Jeez. I feel like I'm like the only guy buying bikes except for that deal that I missed today. Look at this little dude. Ooh. Saddles nose down a little bit. I usually like them level, but for selling them, sometimes nose down's better. Makes them feel more comfortable in a test ride. Bars are hella crooked. And I just lost my cable adjustment. So you shouldn't do that. I had it right at about the minimum, I think. So I'll put it right back there, the minimum insertion, so they're as high as possible. This is why I hate stem cables, because I want to be able to adjust those bars without losing your brake adjustment. Oof, feels way tighter. The rear feels super loose all of a sudden. That looks like it slipped. Definitely moved down. I'll look and see if there's any evidence it actually slipped. Or still where it's pinched. Oh, it definitely looks like it slipped. I think this bolt wasn't tight enough. We're gonna fight that real quick. So this is my other method for adjusting. This looks like it slipped. Maybe, maybe not. But either way, I know I want it a little more than 1/8 inch up, so I'm going to put a Sharpie mark on this cable. A little less than 1/4 inch up. We can pinch this and pop the brake out. And that's another thing to look out for. If you set these up too tight, you won't be able to use the quick release. You want to be able to pinch the wheel with the brakes, have enough slack to get this wheel out. Which it barely does, so moving this up is going to be a bit of a trick. Or I could just roll the barrel adjuster out a little bit. Let's check the front. Front's a little tight. Can we pinch the fronts and get the quick release out? Yes, we can. So yeah, we can tighten the back a little bit. Also, once we adjust the brake pads after test ride and the squeal, they might make this a little tighter, a little looser. We might have to mess with it some more. Hoping this is where this slipped, not down here. All right, I'll move this up just a little bit to hide that Sharpie mark. See what happens. I like the Sharpie mark so you actually know if you've moved it, because it's going to bounce around or you're going to slip. If you know where it is and it slips again, you'll see that Sharpie mark pop out and you'll know what's going on. If it slips again, we'll add another little washer in here. So maybe it's not getting enough purchase on the threads or something. Okay, came up and hid that. Squeezing this together. Can we get the brakes back on? No, it is too tight now. We'll see if I can turn the barrel adjuster in and get us that extra room we need. Yes, it's real tight. What'll probably happen is the housing seated inside these little ferrules. Something wasn't totally flat and mushed. And I'll probably do it again if I squeeze it 4 or 5 or 10 times. I would recommend that with derailleur cables, anything. We're going to seat them, we're going to squeeze them a bunch of times. Get stuff to mush. Yeah, that's mushes. Now, it pops in and out almost easily. So yeah, stuff's just seating and setting. And after the test ride, we might be doing some more adjusting. There's some grease from the headset on this cable. There's some grease from the stem sliding in. Alright, back on the ground, air in the tires, check that headset adjustment. So to check the headset adjustment, I like to squeeze the front brake, turn the wheel sideways, try and rock it back and forth so you can feel any play in here. You can hear when the brakes are trying to squeal. Still real smooth. No play. See if we can mess this all up. Yeah, the whole thing moved. Still real smooth. Still no play. I'm gonna hold this lower cup. The tooth washer is supposed to keep the bottom cup from moving when you tighten the top cup. They never do. They just jam into the threads and mangle things. Hold this bottom cup. Tighten that top cup. Just make sure it's cinched. Riveting content, pumping tubes up. I like my fat tires kind of high because I'm heavy. I like them about 50. They usually start feeling real crazy to me around 28 to 30. Pump up to 50 again. I will admit I get more flats when they're at 50. They're a lot lower, they really don't get flats. They just squish right over everything. Now this pump is so much better than the one I have upstairs. I also think that non-puncture proof tires are more puncture proof. They are suppler, let them squish over hard things instead of just hammering them in, especially on fat tires. So I usually get the non-puncture proof version of things. Are cheaper and better. Once you get down to really skinny road tires, that tends not to be true anymore and you need the puncture proof stuff. So this tester worked great. Shifted all the gears like it should. Front and back. No matter what ring I'm in the front, shifted great in the back. Brakes didn't squeal at all. They feel real even and nice. Now I might just while I'm out, give them a little look-see. Maybe a little adjust and try again, but this thing shifts awesome. It's kind of my size. I mean, it's not terribly small. I'm supposed to get like 3 inches for a mountain bike. Still put a foot down. Something about these tires in the street, they're just kicking up every little small rock right into my sandals, so that's not awesome, but I don't really ride my sandals that much. Yeah, let's do a little, I almost hesitate to mess with the brakes since they're working so nice. This one's got a little reverse toe. This one's got a little normal toe. A little normal toe. This one's got a lot of toe. I'm definitely going to adjust this one and we'll test ride it again and see what happens. Oh, wrong tool for the job. A little socket 3-way won't fit over those brakes, hits the housing. So I have to grab my regular 3-way. It's always the one that's on the hard side in the stand. It's always messed up. Go figure. You can never see it, have to fight it. I'm going to squeeze the brake, try and hold some tension on this. Loosen up this bolt. Hold it so it doesn't turn. You don't like that in a turn. Sometimes I can turn it back the other way. Instead of loosening, it'll just turn the whole pad. Yeah. It's quite a bit of play in this. Still a lot of toe in, but not too much. Double check this is tight. One more little test ride. Okay, so got that adjusted. Brakes still stop awesome. It definitely made this rear lever feel a lot looser, so I just gave the barrel adjuster a couple of turns out. And it made them feel real even, made the brakes feel real even and squishy, but real stoppy. No squeal. Just gotta wipe off a little grease. Yeah, that was a good test ride. I might go right around the block a few times, but I think we're golden. Alright, went on the block a few times. Brakes just feel better and better and better. Tires ride just amazing. I love those pan racers. Wish I wasn't such a cheap ass and buy my own bike. This bike looks good in the sun. I want to do a little bit more cleaning. I did notice that this grip's a little chewy. I'm sure it's fine, but I'm going to replace it. I really did appreciate having that saddle down a little bit. It feels weird to ride, but it wasn't stabbing me in the front. That was great. Unlike my Berthaud, which is just an ass hatchet. Lots of room for fenders, all the rack mounts. Just bootyful. For the last finishing touches on the old Bridgestone CB1, I went ahead and found these ESI grips I got brand new to swap meet for $5. And I'm going to change them out. These old grips are cool. They're not sticky yet, but they're a little mangled and they're kind of dirty. And nice new silicone grips are really, really comfortable, nice and easy to clean. The old grips are real old. And on really nice bars, I don't like to do this because I don't like to scratch them, but on whatever bars and things are hidden, I'm just going to go ahead and use a little box cutter razor blade. On the bottom side of the bar, we won't really see it in case I nick it, which I will. Just going to cut these old Abner grips off. And they are really on there. Cool beans. Same thing on this side, just way underneath. Try not to cut all the way through, but most of the way through. You're joking. Now, different grips are different amounts of pain in the ass to get on and off the bike. I found these ESI and other silicone grips pretty easy. They're real tight, they stretch. There's a little teeny bit of rubbing alcohol on the actual bar. Mostly wipe it off or blow it off. A little tiny bit in the grip. Mostly blow it out or wipe it off. You don't want too much because it'll slide on. It won't ever really evaporate and dry. So a little bit, let it slide on. Some grips come really loose. Some grips are always come loose. You need to rubber cement them on. I often like to do a little wrap or two of electrical tape and then rubbing alcohol, barely slide on some grips. Makes it a little fatter, and then the tape sticks to the bars pretty good. The rubbing alcohol grip will stick to the tape pretty good. So it sort of really depends on the grips. Let's give these guys a shot. Just barely missed, just barely missed. Just barely. If it feels a little bit too easy, take them off, blow them off. Really let it evaporate. This is kind of a hard way. I've definitely seen guys, a lot of shops will use compressed air to blow them on. That usually works a lot easier, but I don't have compressed air. You don't really need it, and I end up doing it this way all the time because I'm too lazy to even when I do have compressed air. I've seen a YouTube video recently, the guy did a trick where he put a couple of zip ties inside the grip, so it slid on the zip ties, let it slip down, and pull the zip ties out. That was pretty cool. Barely, barely. Sort of barely wiggling them up because the hole's a lot smaller in the bar, so you gotta pry it on and up and in. Really twisting, really pushing. I think that one will dry on its own. The ESIs come with little bar end plugs. They're usually for really nice expensive bars, which are much thinner. So sometimes they don't want to fit in on their own. So you have to trim them a little bit. Let's see. Oh, I think this will be alright. Boom! Pushed them in. If I can get these to move. So Sort of wiggle them down a little bit to kind of hide that grip. There. And that is it. This bike's totally done. Oh, set the back down there. That is it. The Bridgestone CB1 is totally done. Take it outside and take some nice photos of it, and I'm going to put it up on the internets for sale. Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, and put it on my Instagram, and hopefully, we had a real nice sunny weekend, someone's going to realize they need a bike desperately and freak out and buy this thing. So, thanks for watching.